In a recent trip to the Goodwill outlet store, I picked up this book thinking I got Dean Koontz' What the Night Knows hardcover book. When I looked at the dust jacket, it didn't fit right. Always check your books before you buy them. That's right. Inside was Clive Cussler's The Chase. But there's an exciting find. This is an autographed copy. That raises it from a $5 book to about a $25 book. You never know. Don't judge it by its cover. Okay, so that was our first example of don't judge a book by its cover. Right? I judged it by its cover thinking it was one thing, found out it was something else inside, and then an extra bonus as well once I opened the cover. But I'm going to show you a number of other books from my personal collection that have similar stories but different reasons why you shouldn't judge a book by its cover. So let's go. Okay, for another episode of our Don't Judge a Book by Its Cover, we have a old book. It's Milton, the works of Milton, in this embossed cover, gold lettering. The spine is in terrible condition. It's completely deteriorated. And the internal pages are also missing and torn, some of them, like the ones in the beginning section of the book. So in this case, the cover is bad. The book's not in very good shape. It has the gold leafing on the edges. Now, since we don't know what year publication this is, one of the clues you can use to help determine that is this particular book has a page towards the back advertising for the publisher. So this is Summer Legends, so this is just a notice of some of them, the different publications they do. But here's one of the other clues. It's like here, they're advertising this new book called Maximina by Valdez. And it says one of the best books of the year. Such a novel is something to be grateful for, blah, blah, blah. So that tells me that this is the first year of publication for this Maximina book. So then what you can do is you can look up Maximina and see when it was first published. In this particular case, it was first published in 1885. So that dates this book to 1885, circa 1885. So that's another key. And sometimes they'll have a, like this actually lists a number of new publications. So they say new, so it's relative term, could be in the last year, 2 years, especially back in those days. Things didn't travel quite as fast as it does today. Another item on our Don't Judge a Book by Its Cover, and all of these books I found at the Goodwill outlet bins store. So I found this book. Again, the cover, you can tell the glue has let loose of the fabric covering over the cardboard, has a paper label over the top. The book is called A Voice from the Silence by Charles Philip Nettleton. And this one happens to be inscribed in the front of it. It says, "To Bryant from Mother, Christmas 1904. So that was the first time this was given. It was given to Brian, who put his library label on the front. But then this Bryant, gave it to his granddaughter in 1976. He put another inscription on there when he gave it to her. So I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. Then I noticed on this page, it says, these signatures can add nothing to the worth of the work, but they stand in loving remembrance of the man. I thought, well, that's kind of interesting. Edwin Markham, I never know how to pronounce that, Joachim Miller, and Ina Coolbrith. And I was like, okay, those are well-known names. They're poets. They're very well-known names from the early 1900s when this book was originally published. So I looked them up, found out who they were, and found out they were contemporaries and friends of Charles Nettleton. Charles Nettleton passed away. He was a poet as well. He passed away. They published this book after his death, his family and friends. And inside of the book was also some correspondence from the family talking about the book and kind of the history of it. So this publication is from the family of Charles Nettleton. How it ended up in the Goodwill bins, I have no idea. But we can prove it through the correspondence that's with the book. And it's incredible that it has the 3 signatures as well as the, that doesn't belong in there, family history. So, again, don't judge a book by its cover, because it's one, this book is actually, you can buy a new version of it today, electronic versions of it. All right, we have another book. This one is called Mute Christian. It's a famous book. And this particular one, this one, you almost can judge it without the cover because this cover is loose. This is from 1839, is the publication. And what's interesting about this one is I kept seeing this, there's stamps on there for Covenant College. There's also one for John Blackburn. And I was like, that's very interesting. So this is a very old publication. And it used to be a library book. It's on the back. You can see where the library pocket for the card was glued to the back. As well as on the spine, it has their little tag for the filing system. But here's what's interesting. I took Covenant College. Oh, and then on this first page, it's hard to read, but there's the Blackburn name as well, the John Blackburn. So I took, and as well as there's a Covenant College, but there's also another name on there. I can't remember, can't really read it, but I did a little research. I just typed in John Blackburn and Covenant College, and I found this newspaper article that came up online that Mr. Blackburn was desirous that the books go to a school which was faithful to Presbyterian doctrine and tradition. He was satisfied that Covenant College and Seminary was such an institution. So he donated his entire 3,000-volume library to the college. And so now that proves the provenance of this book with his name, the college, and the newspaper article. What does it add to the value of this book? I can't say, but it helps prove that this book, is an authentic book from the college as well as from Mr. Blackburn's collection. So that was fun. I enjoy that kind of research. Okay, here's one very unassuming, but this is actually the most expensive book I own. It's got an inscription on the front, Ferguson, 1897, May 31st. It's probably the first owner. And again, I found this at the Goodwill bins. That's right. It's The Time Machine by H.G. Wells. This one has the typo, says H.S. Wells. This happens to be the very first printing as well as the first edition. This is the American edition, which was published a few weeks apart from the English version. They do not know how many of these were published with the typo. It was caught and changed in subsequent editions. But you can tell it's a very unassuming small book, but it has a value into the thousands of dollars for this one book. All right, this one's an unusual one. Again, I found this at the bins. It's a leather binding. It's actually a handmade book. Somebody folded their own signatures, bound them with this leather cover, tied them with the leather straps. And then they also have this front section loose, and this is from 1926. And this particular book is written in both, mostly in, what was it? I believe Norwegian, Danish. It's written in Danish and English. It was written in the 1920s. It's a book of poems, which I can't read. Someone did take some time to try to translate some of it. But Magnus Christopherson, his name is embossed on the front cover. This was his book. They're his poems. And again, just through researching his name, he immigrated to Sweden, or from Sweden to the USA, at an unknown date, but he ended up in Lincoln, Nebraska, which I also lived in Lincoln, Nebraska. So that was kind of fun. All right, here's another book in our series. Don't judge a book by its cover. This one is beautifully bound book. Look at the beautiful marbleized paper. And when you open it up, this is the Victorian Edition Deluxe. It's a limited edition. This is number 666 of 1,000 copies. This is volume 2 of Great Expectations. Did not find volume 1, only found volume 2. And the thing I want to show you about this is now the spine is pretty much gone. This is all I have of the spine besides this piece that's still hanging on. But within the spine is this beautiful printed illustration. And this is very common for publishers in the early days to reuse printed paper for things like this, where they glue the signatures together. They would use scrap paper to hold them. And so in this particular case, it just happened to be this beautiful illustration on the end. So if it wasn't for the fact the leather spine was so damaged, you would never see this beautiful print, which is probably either in another book or in a newspaper publication or something. But yep. So like I say, that's what I have left. But that's just a little journey on our don't judge a book by its cover, because you never know what's either inside the book or its value, because it's unassuming, or its history. Thanks for watching, folks. Catch you next time.